Poinsettias, of course, are the big holiday plants coming in. And you'll get all the usual questions. We're going to sort of go over the basics and you can ask your questions. And these are things you all know, but it doesn't hurt to say. There's going to be somebody in here that doesn't. This, of course, is a modified leaf. It's called a bract. We call it the flower. But the true flower is that little yellow buttons inside. And what people need to know is that that's the first thing that's going to go. That doesn't mean your poinsettia is too old or that it's not good, it's not going to last. Because the bracts, the leaves, stay on forever, or ever, almost forever. So that's one of the things when they look here. That's the true flower. That's going to open up, go by, and if they're caring for it, they can just pinch those off as they begin to go by so they don't mildew or mold, and just get rid of them. I did a little YouTube, which Mary and we may do it again a little bit better. It's called Patty Poinsettia Speaks Up, and we had a good time with it. I'm behind the poinsettia with my white gloves, and Mary is over the side. Says, "Hi, I'm Patty Poinsettia. I'm going to tell you how to keep me happy." And we go through because it's you get tired of saying the same basic rules all the time. So then after a while, I talk about. You don't want to look like this, and there's Mary's hand sliding the bad-looking poinsettia, and Mary's hand coming along, pulling it out again. But it's fun. So here's our basics on poinsettia care, and then how do I keep my poinsettia to make it bloom again next year. The most important thing, that I see, more people make a mistake. They let their poinsettia dry out. Your poinsettias, first of all, they need to buy a good poinsettia. And nothing against it. You go to Home Depot when the truck arrived yesterday, you're going to get a good plant because it was grown by a good grower. If you go to Home Depot or Costco's even worse, 10 days after that poinsettia will have been sitting in a box, in a sleeve, in the dark. And when it does that, it doesn't change the looks at the moment. But it causes something they call epinasty, which means that after you get it home, then it sort of collapses. And you think it's your fault. Well, it was an old poinsettia. So if people start with a fresh poinsettia, which is one of the reasons we think Weidner's is good, because our poinsettia has to travel maybe 100 feet from around the corner, so it doesn't have to go in a box a long way. Oh, by the way, important announcement. You need to take this home. Come out yourselves, hand it out to your neighbors, stand on a street corner with a sign like this. We do have the only behind-the-scenes guided poinsettia tours where you can actually come in the greenhouse November 23rd and 24th. And there's some little handouts there in your stuff that are strictly advertising. This Sunday is artists painting in the garden, so if you'd like to paint, come up this Sunday and look at the different artists showing their wares. And then the next weekend is the behind-the-scenes tour. The tour start at 10, 12, and 2 on Saturday, and 12 and 2 on Sunday. They're free. We don't charge for this at all. We do hope you will buy something, of course. Yes?
I don't think we got that handout, are you?
No, I didn't.
Okay, they should have.
I think it's down.
We're not allowed to pass out advertising per se.
Oh, okay.
Good.
You'll have to write it down.
So you'll have to write it down. Yeah, but I can advertise it in voice. Of course, this is another name place. 695 Normandy.
Remember about poisonous.
About poisonous?
It's not poisonous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are. Poinsettias are not poisonous. Paul Ecke, in fact, Senior, would eat some of the poinsettia bracts. Lots of plants in the euphorbia family can be toxic, but not the poinsettia. It's going to be one of your most frequently asked questions. How often to water? How often shall I water my poinsettia? Well, it depends on where you've got it. If you've got it outside, it's going to need water more often than inside because it's going to get more light, more heat, and more wind. If you've got it inside, what we tell people is don't put it right next to a heater vent. Try not, well, you can't put it on top of the TV anymore because we don't have TVs like that. Give it good light and water it when it begins to just barely need water. So I've perfected this, which I have no idea whether this is right or not, but I think it's close. So if you've got a little 2-inch poinsettia, one of these little mini stars, which these are not ready to sell yet, they're getting there, water it every 2 days, 2-inch, 2 days. If you've got a 4-inch poinsettia, water it every 4 days. If you've got a 6-inch poinsettia, water it every 6 days. If you've got a bigger one, it depends on how much plant you've got and where you've got it. But every 6 days, sometimes even 8 or 9 days for a big one. The best water meter in the world are your 2 fingers. Taking a pinch of soil, if it feels moist and cool, it's wet enough. If it's beginning to feel dry and warm, it's time to water. They can use ice cubes or crushed ice. That works fine. I think 1 cup of ice cubes equals like a 1/3 cup of water. But when they've got their poinsettias in some places hard to reach, that's an easy way. Just take and put half a dozen ice cubes on it every couple of days or so. And it melts slowly, doesn't hurt the plant, and you don't have that runoff that's maybe going to ruin, drip onto the carpet.
So you just put it right on top and that's
Just
it?
right on top, they'll melt right into the soil. And people say, oh, isn't it gonna be too cold? No, it's not gonna be too cold. You can also take your leftover drink. You know, when somebody serves you something, you just really want to drink. So especially if you're at somebody else's house and the wine was terrible, and you say, oh, what a lovely plant you've got there. We all do tend to have that irresistible urge when we're in somebody's house and the plant is wilted like this. You know?
Oh, yes.
That's how you can tell a real gardener. A real gardener is somebody who goes ahead and gets some water and waters the plant, no matter what the hostess thinks like. So, if your poinsettia is allowed to dry out to the point of wilting, which means it's got really dry, you will lose all the leaves. The person who calls you will lose all the leaves. They may not fall off immediately, but they will fall off in a day or 2 or 3. Those leaves basically are already dead. They're just taking their time about falling off. So that's the biggest thing people do. They let their poinsettia dry out totally because they just don't think about the idea behind watering. Just sort of, oh, it's really wilting. Well, I guess maybe I watered. Or they let it sit in water. We all have these nice little plastic pot covers. If they don't have a hole in the bottom of that pot cover, especially if it's sitting in the store in a pot cover, and somebody's watering, that water is pooling down here. Whenever the roots sit in water, it saturates the soil, that takes out the air, and then pretty soon the roots begin to drown. Now that's a little slower process, but it still is deadly. So underwater, letting it dry out totally. Too much water, it's just going to sort of decline and the roots rot, and then you've got a plant that looks so bad you wish it would die. Yes. If it's outside, I often tell people to just dig a little bit of a hole if they're putting in like a flower bed so that it'll sit up straight, so they can just bury the whole pot a little bit. They're probably not going to have to answer that question, but the other question is, how can I keep my poinsettia after the holidays? Well, first of all, you're going to wait to cut it back and wait to plant it until St. Patrick's Day. So we did this all on holidays. So you can just enjoy the poinsettia, however good or bad. The bigger the poinsettia, the easier it is to regrow it the next year. So it's going to be really, really hard for somebody to take this. They might as well just, buy another one. It's a little harder to do a 4-inch, but 6-inch they certainly do. This is what you call a 6-inch pinched. So that means it was one cutting growing up, and you can see how it broke there. This year, all the poinsettias look really good. So when it gets about so tall, we pinch out the tip, and that makes it branch. You want it to break, call those breaks, evenly all the way around, and you want to pick a variety that's going to go straight up. This happens to be Freedom, but Prestige is the other one that we use a lot of because the branches tend to be up like a base like you want them to. If the branch goes out this way, it's going to break and fall off as soon as it gets big. So you're going to just enjoy it, put it outside or inside if it's mild or in the patio, until St. Patrick's Day. Now this is where people don't want to do this. at St. Patrick's Day, thereabouts, you need to cut off the blooms. You cut them off right underneath the flower, the grass. Or if you got a great big one, you can cut them down lower. Because once the bracts begin to turn red, it's like being pregnant. You can't have another baby till you have the first one. So until that customer or the person calling you, until they cut off those blooms, the plant can't grow again. Because it doesn't grow anymore after when the bracts turn red. That plant basically stops. It's pregnant, stops growing upwards or outwards. It can stretch and get taller. You don't want that. But it doesn't actually grow. When you cut off the blooms, then you have the baby, and the plant can say, okay, I can begin to grow again. But you're not ready to plant it yet. People who go plant their poinsettias in January or February, the ground is too cold, it's gonna die. Count on it. Because it doesn't like to have cold, wet feet. After you cut off the blooms, yeah, you got a question right now?
So when you're saying blooms, you're not talking about the leaves?
I'm
you're
talking
just
about the bracts.
top.
I'm talking about the whole, what we call the flower.
Okay.
Not the little tiny stuff, because we all call them flowers, even though they're not. So you're gonna cut off all the red parts, or white parts. Then you wanna let it start to grow again before you plant it. So when they see new leaves coming out, begin to grow, by that time it's probably April, then you can plant it out in the garden. The soil has warmed up, the plant knows it's alive, the plant knows it's growing, time to put it out in a new home. Pick a place that's mostly sunny, not in a corner, good air circulation, and either put it into a bigger pot or plant it. If they put it into a bigger pot and they want to make it, bring it into bloom early, this is our little Patty poinsettia bit. If it's in a pot, you can't do this if it's in the ground, of course. Then sometime right around the end of, helps if you open it.
Here.
Helps if you got your daughter on.
There you go.
Thank you, Mary. So right around the end of August, beginning of September, they can do this fun experiment. First, they have to clean out a closet. That's a major job. Then they take Patty poinsettias, it's all green, it's been growing out in the yard, and every night when they watch the news and have their evening drink, whatever, they put Patty into the closet and shut the door. Good night, Patty. And then in the morning when you have your coffee and it's breakfast time, you open the closet door and say, good morning, Patty, how are you? Did you sleep well? Good. Would you like to go outside and play? It's a nice warm sunny day. If it's nice and warm and sunny, Patty goes outside to play. Otherwise, Patty stays where it's warm if it's raining and cold. That night, you put Patty back in the closet. Good night, Patty. Same thing every night. You key it with the evening news and your morning coffee.
What month was that?
Well, you can start anytime towards the end of August, beginning of September. The sooner you start, the sooner it's going to come into bloom, or to turn to bracts red. Every other weekend, every other Sunday, Patty gets Sunday brunch. So Patty gets to sit on the table and get some liquid fertilizer to keep her growing well. After about 6 weeks or so, 4 to 6 weeks, 5 weeks, you will begin to see those green leaves start to turn color. Then you can take Patty out of the closet and put her in a nice, warm, careful spot. Don't put her out in the wind. Because if we put our poinsettias out now where it's cold and they're not ready to be fully sold, they won't expand correctly. So you've done all this work and Patty looks good. Keep Patty in the house or in the patio where it's warm until those bracts get totally colored, whatever color. And that's all they have to do. Then they're home free. If they've got their poinsettias in the yard, there was another thing they're going to call you about. My poinsettia has all this white stuff covering the leaves. What is it? Ask mildew. Until we had freedom, we didn't have mildew on the poinsettias outside. Freedom brought freedom from black closet, but did not bring freedom from mildew. So that's one of the things that people probably will call you about. You know, I've got my poinsettia in the garden, and it's got this funny white stuff on the leaves. Wish you wait a moment and say, oh, I'm sure that's probably down in powdery mildew. And then you tell them what they can spray with. They can spray anytime up to when the bracts are starting to get red. It'll damage the bracts a little bit if they spray. But other than that, they can go ahead and use any kind of good rose mildew spray of any kind.
Your mom
Yes,
mentioned outside and lights.
yes, you mean in the sense that more water dries out
That it
faster.
won't come into bloom if they have artificial
Oh,
light on it.
yes. Poinsettias are more or less light, day length. How many of you know what we're talking about when we talk about day length? Pretty good, very good. Okay, this is why you're master gardeners. Poinsettias need to come into bloom when the days get shorter and the nights get longer. If you've got your poinsettia outside and you've got some time releasing lights that come on every night, that's going to tell your poinsettia is still summer, and it's going to delay coming into bloom. That's why when we grow poinsettias, we want to make sure we don't have any outside lights, street lights or other stuff coming in, because it doesn't take very much. If you interrupt, and we'll do this on the winter cactus too, your poinsettia needs 12 to 13 hours of dark to begin to say it's time to change the bracts into red. If you interrupt, let's say you've got your poinsettia in the kitchen, because that's a good place for it. And the kitchen, of course, gets dark, but you go in every night at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock before you go to bed, and you fix yourself a drink or a cup of coffee or some water or whatever, and you turn on the lights in the kitchen, you have interrupted that day length hours, and it starts again at hour 1. It just discards everything that happened before. So that's one of the, on both the Christmas cactus and this, one of the most common questions you'll get.
I have a question on the poinsettia.
Sure.
So if you didn't put your poinsettia in the closet, what is the natural, when would it bloom?
It'll naturally come into bloom right around Christmas or later. The ones we have outside at the nursery, the old Henrietta Eckies, are just beginning to turn a little bit red now. But if you want them to bloom early, you have to do that treatment. That's why they can bloom poinsettias in the summertime, because they do that artificially. In the bastion right now. Yes?
Evelyn, can you get that old poinsettia? My neighbor lady got one from Paul Ecke, and it must be 12 foot tall.
Yeah.
And has about 100 blossoms. She doesn't do a thing to it. It's
Yeah.
as tall as her garage now.
Yes. That's the way they naturally grow.
Can you get those?
Yes, and I do when I get my act together and take the cuttings at the right time. I will have them for sale in the middle of summer,
Okay.
in like a gallon can, just like anything else. I didn't get it done this year. If anybody has that really, really, really double one, the totally, really double, I'd like to get my hands on some cuttings for that, because I've got the old Henrietta Ecke, which is semi-double, but it's not that really double.
Lovely.
So, you know somebody, let me know. So, one of the things people always ask, go back to poinsettias for a minute. Where do they get all these different colors? It's just absolutely amazing. Now, how do they get a white poinsettia out of a red one? Well, inside, in the genome of all these plants, apparently there is every color. And when you're a breeder, and the breeding nowadays is all very, very high tech. And so they can treat it with, there's a chemical they can treat it with, it makes lots and lots of sports. And so like at the Ecke Ranch where they're doing their breeding, they will treat the seeds so that then when they come up, they've got 500 poinsettias. 300 of them are going to be tall and scrawny. Others are going to be this or that wrong, but there might be 1 or 3 or 4 that look pretty good. And they will take those and then they will cross again. And so they can breed and hybridize to get these different colors out. And it comes out like sports, and then they have to make sure that that is going to be what they call stable. So this is white glitter. This Sonora white glitter. One of the most popular points. It's really a pretty poinsettia. You can see the white there. So this is not totally stable. In other words, it doesn't stay like this the whole time. So did it start from a white where they brought the red in, or did it start from red where they brought the white in? But either way, it won't necessarily keep this. I was talking to Franz, the breeder at the Ecke Ranch one time about sporting, how they get these things and whether they stay stable. He said if you took 20 different colored poinsettias and planted them out, little by little, over the next 10, 15 years, they would all end up reverting back to red. Eventually. That's the straw, and that's the natural color. So
Do they
then,
use cuttings every time at one, once they get the seed going, then they just do cuttings?
yes, they're vegetatively propagated, so we'll get little cuttings and either unrooted or rooted. Do they use cuttings every time? Yes, now they also can do on lots of projects what we call tissue culture, where they take that little tiny meristem and put it in the certain, like agar, and then it goes around and around and around, and eventually you get 10,000 little baby clones. That's really technical. But basically, most of these things are what we call vegetatively propagated as opposed to a seed. I'll give you a little bit of history on proven winners, which I don't get all the credit, because Kingston, Germany gets half the credit. And all the rest of the proven winner group for promoting it. What happened, what made proven winners, or that whole idea of being able to patent a plant such a success, and why you have all these new plants that come along all the time. Before that, they patented roses, and they put patents on some of the poinsettias, but you didn't really know or aware of it. When we started proven winners, they were looking to have new vegetatively propagated plants. Now, if you have a seed, something from a seed, you can't patent it. Seeds are not patentable. So, Carol Brewer's out there looking for new plants in the jungle, and she sees this really nice looking plant. Maybe it's blooming, maybe it's not, but it's really good looking. She takes that back home. She can't patent that. Doesn't matter how nice it looks. She grows that for a few years, and there's a sport. That sport looks even better, or even worse, whatever. She can take cuttings off that sport. That she can get a patent on. Or she's found two of them. They look a little bit different. She brings two of them home. Of course, it's illegal what she's been doing, but that's not. She's smuggled them in. So she's got two that are close. And let's say they're begonias or something like that. So she gets her little brush and she crosses those. The babies from that she can patent. She has to keep track of who's the mama and who's the papa, so she can put all this in the patent application, which costs right now a good many thousands of dollars to get a patent. So as proven winners got started, Scavola was the first one that Kingston in Germany had, because there were some Australians that also wanted their plants to get out. They got them to Kingston in Germany. Kingston was doing New Guinea patients. He would bring New Guineas over to visit the Eckies. He would come over to our place and sit and talk with Bob and myself. And we both had the same goal of having something new to introduce to the public every year. So if we had something new that Bob or I had found on our travels, Ludwig would take that back. If he had something new, like the new Brachycomb or this, eventually Scavola, he would give it to us. Because at that time, the Eckies were not interested in that part of the field. So after a while, when he got the Scavola, that was really good enough that he could see potential there. So he took out the patents on it, and he placed it with ourselves, at that time Weidner's, because proven winners hadn't really been born yet, 4-Star in Michigan, and another greenhouse, Pleasant View in New Hampshire. He wanted them in greenhouse companies that were small enough that we were selling wholesale liners, but not so big as like ball seed that it would get lost in the shuffle. Scavola took a while to catch on, but as soon as we had it at the trade show, then everybody started to copy it, and so then we had to have one thing after another. So what their rule is that it has to be propagated by cuttings, and it has to be pass a bunch of tests to come into the proven winner group. It might come into a lower group that 4-Star might have something that they want to sell separately, but if it's called proven winners, it has to pass a whole bunch of tests and really be a good plant. Once they take the patent out, and then they own you, this is Carol. Carol comes with her plant, and they take it on trial, and they say, this is a great plant, Carol. You signed the trial agreement. What they will do now, we'll take the patent out for you. Because Carol doesn't have any money. She doesn't know how to do it, and she doesn't have any money. Figured the $13,000 would be a little bit of a big belt to try out. If then when that plant then comes out as a proven winner, which they've called it, proven winner, Begonia Carol, whatever the name they think of, and it begins to sell, that royalty fee is put in, there's probably around 7 or 8 cents. 4 cents will go to Carol eventually, 2 cents for the label, 1 cent or 2 cents for marketing, and so on. It's all folded into what we pay when we buy those cuttings. We get the label, and it's got the PP patent applied for or patent number on it. If Carol has something really good, that plant then is sold in Germany and Japan and Australia, all over the world. And those little 4 cents per cutting add up very nicely, thank you. So Carol gets a nice check once or twice a year, nice big fat check maybe. Maybe it's a little skinny, scrawny check, but depending on how well the plant sells. This gives Carol an incentive to get out there and drop around the jungle and find more and more and more.
Going home right now.
That's right. That's right. It gives that backyard or that high-tech breeder a reward for his work. So then they get busy and we get all these new varieties and new plants coming in that are improved and better because there's some money at the end of the time. That's the whole story. And that's why the proven winner concept, which is now copied by Ball Seed and Neckies and a whole bunch of other people, why that has really revolutionized the plantscape in your backyard. And it all started because we had to have a new plant every year, and Keister had to have a new plant every year. Okay, end of that story. So let's see, where shall we go next? All the different, let me just tell you some names. This is called ice crystals. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous poinsettia. Beautiful flowers, it holds well, stays on, nice compact on the short side. Very trendy in the color. This is one of your, on the marbles, we searched long and hard. This is one of the marbles that has real good marbling. A lot of the marbles are kind of insipid and blah. And I have to look and see which one. Oh, this is, I just put marble on it because I didn't have time to go in the greenhouse to see which one we picked. This one is called Sparkling Punch. And then we've got, of course, White Glitter. And then in both the 6-inch and the 4-inch, not quite ready to finish yet, is Picasso. There's early Monet, and we don't do late Monet, we do early Monet, and there's all sorts of, so when we get, as soon as we get through Christmas, we'll sit down with all of the different breeders, all of the different things that poinsettias are being offered, and Oliver and Caleb and myself maybe, we'll sit there in the office, and we'll look at all the different varieties. What do we go? What sold well? What broke? What didn't sell? What was good, bad, or indifferent? Poinsettias come early season, which would be like Freedom. This is called early Freedom. Mid-season and late season, separated by only about 2 weeks. But there's like, this poinsettia here, this little mini star, that's got another week, maybe 10 days before it's ready. We don't take them out of the greenhouse until they are fully, the bract is fully expanded. Otherwise, you're going to take it home and it's going to be too cold and you'll be disappointed. So they will, when we're picking, we want some to come in early, some to come in mid-season, and some to come in late season. And so they might be different varieties. Snowcap is one of the whitest of white. That's still looking green in the greenhouse. So it's got another 2 weeks probably before it's going to be ready. And we'll put our orders together, and I'll say, well, I would really like this, and Oliver will say, we're not ordering from that breeder this year. I have to have enough to make a full order. Or I don't have space because they have to be put in the greenhouse according to when they're going to finish. So no, you can't have that one. So maybe you could make a different choice. We've got an orangey looking one this year. Should have been bred to come out early, but of course it's got another week or so. But it is really quite orange. And we'll see if that's this trendy. We'll see if it sells. It's one of the new ones. Yeah.
A question, a few years ago they came out with plum pudding. That's sort of a purple, but it didn't take off, did it?
No, give it an ugly color. It looked like a funeral color. But they did, there's a number, there's a burgundy that's out there, and there's another one.
Oh, there's Merlot or Chianti.
Yeah, we do Chianti. And I think
It's not really burgundy, it's just
No.
like a deep red.
Yeah, deep red, sort of burgundy, sort of like Chianti wine.
But the burgundy, Cortez burgundy is truly burgundy.
Yes, but the trouble with Cortez burgundy is it's a chronic, awkward grower. So you're gonna have a branch out here and a branch there and this one, and it finishes kind of late and doesn't like to behave itself. I love it, I mean, the color is perfect, you know. So instead, we're doing Chianti with white in our 8-inch this year. So it's close to burgundy, but plum pudding was just not, it was the first one, but it wasn't the right color. So that's why it
So they're not doing it.
slid off, gently slid away.
On that orange one, couldn't you get that to come, try to get it to come early and do it as a Thanksgiving one?
We
or a
probably
Halloween?
can. Could you get that orange one to come early? If we had high-tech greenhouse, had a place in there where we could put it, where it's getting the right number of dark, yeah, we probably could.
'Cause that
Would
be
we
fun.
do that? Yeah, would we do that when we don't have real high-tech greenhouses? And would enough people buy it for Thanksgiving? Now, it might be ready for this year's Thanksgiving, because it's almost ready. But, you know, are people gonna buy it? Sometimes you do something and the public says, oh, I think I'll just take the old red. So you never know until you try. So we'll try something new every 1 or 2 new ones, and if they sell, fine, we'll do it again. If they don't sell, oh well. So all of these are, and like this is Picasso. It's another week at least away from being ready, so we don't take it out of greenhouses like this yet. Have I covered enough that you know? Oh, one more thing. Always confusing to the people. That's a 6-inch pinched plant. One plant pinched to make it branch and give you multiple flowers. This is what we call a 3-plant. 3 individual plants in here that have not been pinched, so you get 3 great big blooms. It's taller, bigger, so when you're decorating it, this that bill, you get a 5-plant you see in churches and 7 plants and so on. The more plants there are, the more expensive. So this one is $16.95. All the rest of them, 6-inch ones, are $8.95. And Mary's got it all figured with the tax, so she will round up to the closest number when you decide to take them home. This is gonna be sturdier, hold up better, because you've actually got 3 plants in here. But it costs more, yes.
When you see a bunch of beautiful ones, they all look really nice when you go by shape and look. The actual flower, the inside part,
Yeah.
the yellow, and if it hasn't opened up, does it mean it's a younger plant, so is it better to buy them if you to choose between the ones that are closed up completely versus ones that have opened up?
Yes, if you have a choice, buy the younger plant. It is younger.
With
Then I
the,
thought
but
you
that-
asked- I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what your question was,
Yes.
if you're looking at a bunch of poinsettias and the actual true flower, some of them are totally open and some are still just little yellow buds. Are you better off to pick the one with just yellow buds? By about a week or 2. So, but they're all gonna last, if you take care of them, all of these poinsettias should last well through Christmas. They should still be looking good probably on Valentine's Day, which by that time I was sick of them.
Yeah.
I always say I'm gonna, do all the things I tell you guys to do. By the time Valentine's Day comes by, I think, "Jeez, I can't stand that poinsettia any longer." Into the trash they go, you know. The experiment goes down the tubes.
I bought some 4-inch last year, and right away, the inside with the flower, actually, as it started getting black and moldy. Is there, am I doomed, or can I just cut that out and pinch it out and hopefully it'll
Okay,
last?
yeah, her inside, she bought 4-inch poinsettia, and right away, the part where the bloom probably had already gone began to mildew and rot in there. Probably not much, you can certainly pick out what you can. That'll delay it, but it's one of the reasons it's a good idea when the bloom starts to go through, to just take that bloom, pull them off, so that it can't get botrytis in there and start to mildew and get disease. A lot of questions on poinsettias always, because everybody wants them to be successful, and so they're gonna call you to find out. Poinsettias, once they start to bloom, don't really need that much fertilizer. You can give them a little fertilizer if you want to, but since it's not really growing, it's not much one way or the other. Okay, let's see, how am I doing on time here? Let's go